Hello class, we're going to go over everything you need to know for the collage assignment working in CS5. By now you've opened up Photoshop. Let's go over the first things we need to do. Number one is I would always recommend when you come into using communal computers is to change the workspace, to make sure the workspace is how you want it to look like. And so how we do that is we're going to go to Window and to Workspace. Now, for this assignment, I'm going to use Essentials, but all of these are set up to work in those individual spheres, and they're pretty well set up. So if you choose 3D, you have all these 3D tools on the side. If you choose Painting, you have the brushes and the swatches over there. But for this one, again, we're going to use Essentials, and then I'm also going to reset Essentials, right, so that I have it. So you should look exactly like I do. We have color up here, we have adjustments here, and we have layers, channels, and paths here. We'll go over all that if you don't remember those things. And over here we have our toolbar. Your toolbar can either be double stacked, like this, or single stacked. Doesn't matter, those double arrows are right there. So let's start. We're going to go ahead and go get some images from Google. And I've already kind of set that up. You want to follow along, just search for these exact images. You can, of course, use any image you want for the tutorial or for the assignments. You can use a tutorial as a way to start the assignment. So I like to use a horse first because I'm going to show you how to pull off hair. You know, the hair that's kind of would be hard and intricate to pull off in a normal way, but I'm going to show you the way that Photoshop does it really well. So when we search for things with Google images, of course, there's these tools, and you may already, probably already know all this, but there's options for looking at sizes, right? Colors, usage rights, types. All these are very useful now. And so I'm gonna search for a large photo because I want to make an image, right? And I want to be able to have some options. And so what's really great about Google now is whenever you hover over something, it shows you how many pixels it is. So this one's fairly large. So we'll do a right click, control click, open link into image, and see it here. And so I'm going to grab this image. And so what I normally do is I just right click on this and do view image to see it in the actual size. And so you can zoom in and zoom out. This works both on PC or Mac. To see that this size is the right size that we need. And we'll notice later on, like a lot of these images, they take you to things that aren't the actual image. That's kind of the downfall of all these images at your fingertips, is that there's people trying to fool you, get you to buy desktop wallpapers. So just keep looking. And I'm going to right click and save image as. And I'm going to save it to my desktop. I'll just relabel that horse. And you can probably also like click and drag to the desktop, right? So I'm just clicking and holding and dragging to my desktop. Should probably work too on both Macs and PCs. I'm going to grab a flower image, same way. And I'm going to use, I think I'm going to use this one because I like the direction that it's going. And here we go. So yeah, you'll do all this. When I say view image, it actually wants to save it automatically. So I'll just see what that works like. And I'll do it both ways. I'll pull it and drag it to my desktop and save it. And then space, I think I already opened one up. This one looks good. Save image as. There we go. And let me get one more. I'm going to search for a plant. And I'll even write down white background. Dun, dun, dun. Just to show you a variety of things, of ways of selecting things. This one looks fine, if it's a good one. You see it's got some watermarks on it. So I'll actually try to find a different one that doesn't have all those stipulations, all those issues. Let's see here. I'm trying to find one that's a little bit intricate to show you the benefits of the way I'm going to show it. And actually, maybe I can just live with that, the watermarks. Oh, of course I spelled it wrong. Let's see, this one. I'll just use this one. So I'll work around the watermarks. So save image as, and bring that guy into. All right, so let's bring one of these images, or multiple images in there. You can either, drag them into Photoshop or just go to open. And we'll start with the horse. All right, so here's our horse. Let's talk about how we move around in Photoshop. If you need to move around, just hold down the space bar, of course. And that's when you're zoomed in, of course. Space bar. Clicking and dragging will move you around an image. Don't use these bars. That's ridiculous. To zoom in, we're going to use on PCs, it's going to be Control plus or minus, right? So Control plus. Let's see here. Where's my? Sorry, I'm on a new keyboard, so I always forget where those are. They place those. Control plus, Control minus, and if your mouse has a click wheel, you should be able to use that in some ways. In my setting this right now, it's meant to go up and down. And then, of course, for Macs, it's Command plus and Command minus. If you don't know, if it doesn't say Command on it, it's that infinity looking sign next to the space bar. That's Command, and that's going to be the differences. When I say Control something on PC, it's always Command something on Macs, and I'll try to remember to go over that. So here, yeah, we have this image we've moved around. Let's talk about image size. So I'm going to go up to Image. All these different settings are set up very intuitively. If you want to change the image, you go to Image. And so we're going to go down to Image Size. And here we have the details, right? So online we saw already that it was this many pixels. And pixels are, of course, a digital measurement. Down here we have a document size. And this is more of a print measurement. So we have width and height, in my case in inches, and at pixels per inch. What's great about this image is it's already 300 pixels per inch, and so that's generally, rule of thumb, is that's the resolution you want if you ever want to print this. So if you do this project, or if you do these projects in the future, and you want to print these images out as actual physical prints in our lab or on your own time after you finish this class, you could be able to print this at 15 inches by 9 inches, right? You can play around with this a little bit, drop this down to 150 without receiving too much blurriness or digital artifacts. But that's something to be aware of as you work with images online, is that a lot of them actually aren't going to be this large. You can search for them, you can find them, but it's not always, guaranteed. So, yeah, we'll go over resolution sizes as they pertain to other things. 300 is for print. Normally 72 or 144 is for web. And so we can actually, let's look at these other images. We'll bring these in and see what they are. I'm curious. Yeah, so this is 72, your typical image size that you find online. And that's because your eyes, they look at it, they can view it at 72. There's no reason to go higher. Although, of course, now there's a Retina display, so this new resolution standard is 144, so double that 72. If you turn off this resample image just to show you, so if I wanted to print a digital image without having any blurriness or resolution, I would change the resolution. You can see that this changes now from whatever size it was to now 3x4, so it's very small, so I couldn't print it very large. And I just say that because if you get into collages, you want to make more, a lot of times you have to shoot your own footage or find just high resolution images. So we're going to go over how to select things, right? Over here at our toolbar, we have a selection tool. Let me make sure you're getting everything you need there. We have our tools, and the first tool on the upper left is the simple selection tool for shapes. You click and hold this and you have all these options. These you just click and drag, right, to make an elliptical, square, or row. And you'll notice that you can make an oval. Of course, we'll go over this all the time. You hold down Shift and you constrain proportions to be an actual circle, right? And you can drag these shapes. And let's say you want to actually move them while you're dragging them. You hold down Spacebar, and you can actually move it physically in space. Let go of Spacebar and then resize it. And you can let go, and now you have this selection. Now, selections are, of course, in Photoshop, ways of cutting things out, of doing things that only happen within this selection, which I assume you already know all of that. So let's talk about how to change selections, and we'll just go over all these selection tools. So number one is if you want to add to a selection, like you want to add another circle, you just hold down Shift, right? And now you're going to add to that selection. And when they overlap, they will bridge each other and make a larger shape selection. If you want to subtract from a selection, you hold down Alt and you subtract. So I'm making like a Swiss cheese sort of effect here with the selection. And so once you have a selection, there's a number of things you can do. It could be anything that Photoshop can do. For this cutting out, I recommend doing this. I'm going to, with my selection on. You can see I have the marching ants on, and a selection tool actually selected. So not a brush, not any other tool, but an actual selection tool on. You can right click inside the selection and you bring this dialog box up. And what I like to do is I like to do a layer via copy or a layer via cut. And you'll use either one depending on the situation. So layer via copy, you'll see down here in the layer, makes a new layer with that selection tool. And to see that, of course, I turn off the background and now you can see the selection that I've had, right? Let's go back. That's Control Z, right? Or Command Z on the Mac. And we're back to our actual selection, right? So that's the simple shape selection. If you don't hold down Shift or Alt, it automatically deletes that selection you've currently had and makes a brand new selection, right? Underneath, we have the lasso tool. So the lasso tool is how you can draw shapes for a selection. So of course you can use these in conjunction with other selection tools. So I already have a square here. If I hold down Shift, I can draw a organic shape and add to that, or hold down Alt and subtract from that. And you will, if you're good at Photoshop, you use it a lot, you'll use all these selection tools. I'll click and hold and show you the other ones. The polygonal lasso tool works in a way where you click once, let go, move it around, click again, and this is how you can make harder shape selections. So it works really well if you're grabbing like a building, a city out. You would use this tool much more frequently than you would the other lasso tool. And again, hold down Shift, and I can add to that. And you only have to hold down Shift to start it. When you use the polygonal lasso tool, you don't have to hold it down the entire time. And then Alt to subtract, right? The other tool under here is the magnetic lasso tool. I'll show that. I never use this. We used to use this back in the day, but now there's some other tools that work better. And the magnetic lasso tool is, let me zoom in so you can see what's going on, is you start it once and you just kind of try to draw around the thing you want to select. If you go really off track, you can just press delete and it'll delete that point. So let's say you go really up here and, oh, I don't want those 2 points that it made near the eye. And there, I'm going to actually move it back down here and press delete, whatever that was, 4 times. There we go, until I get it back there. But again, I almost never use this. So I'm just going to hit escape to get off that tool because I think it's fairly useless now. The next selection tools we have is one part over. Click and hold and show that. It might be on Magic Wand tool. It might be on Quick Selection tool. The Magic Wand tool is great for grabbing things of one particular color. So like this blue, this Magic Wand tool works well. So that image we had of all the white works. That tool works well for that. It doesn't work well for grabbing things that are different tones, shapes, colors, etc. That tool is called the Quick Selection tool. And this is the most useful tool I found or I use in Photoshop. So first off, let's deselect this selection. That's Control D to deselect. Again, Command D on the Macs. We're going to zoom in, Control Command plus. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab this horse. And so we're just going to, it's like a paintbrush. We're going to paint this roughly. We're not going to worry about the hairs. We're going to take care of that later. To change the size of your brush, just use the open or closed brackets, right? And that will make your brush bigger or smaller. You can normally also right click. It didn't work. Mine must be set up differently. You can also come up here. So anytime you have a tool selected, you have these options up here, and right here you can change your size, the hardness, the spacing, all that's here. I generally just use the brackets to make it bigger or smaller. And so I'm clicking and holding and painting. And I would recommend doing strokes like click, drag, click, drag, click, drag, rather than doing one long drag through the entire image. And that's because if you make a mistake, you can Control Z small parts instead of large parts. So let's get this. Let's talk about if you make a mistake. So let's say you grab too much of this blue and you don't like that. Just like the prior selection options, you can hold down Alt and you'll see that it'll change to a minus sign and you can subtract, like, no, I don't want that. All right, and we're just gonna keep painting this. And I'm not gonna take all the time in the world to make a great selection. but of course you can. All right. So, and what we did in the past, we would go into a quick selection mode, which is right here. I'm going to show this. Don't feel like you have to follow along. This is just to so you know where it's at. This shows you what you have and what you don't have. Mine is set up. I'll double click it to show in red the masked areas. Yours might be a little bit different, and you can change that there. I almost never use this anymore, but this is something we used a lot of. What's nice about this is that you can see like where you didn't grab, and so what you can do is you can paint with either black or white. The black will make it, oh, actually let me switch to a brush. So I switch to B, press B for brush. And I can paint with black this area. Let me see if you saw that. So see, this blue is sticking out. I can recognize that from the red mask. I can paint that in to do that. And that's how we used to do it, right? And so if you wanted to get rid of these hairs, you had to come in here and like with a really tiny brush and paint with white because you want to subtract from that mask and paint that in. So it was real pain. It was real pain and took a lot of time. Let me undo that. I'm going to jump out of quick mask mode here. Again, I don't think you would ever, you might, depending on your field, you might use this, but you generally don't have to use this anymore. But anyway, we have a selection here, and now we're going to go over refining this edge. So I'll go back to this tool because I just pretended I just use it and I'm ready to go. You'll notice at the very top, we have this button called Refine Edge, and that's the button we're going to press. If you're on another tool and you don't see that, it's under the Select menu, and you can find it here. You could also, like you saw me, just go back to a selection tool, and then you'll find that button there also. Click on Refine Edge, and this dialog box appears. Yours will be different depending on whoever chose what before you had it set up as. At the very top, we have the view. This is how you look at it. It's on white. You can have it on black. You can have it on your layers, and you will use these depending on the situation. In my case, it's a black horse, so on this white actually works pretty well for me to see what's going on. These might be set to a number. You can change these all to, you can zero these out if you wish. They each do something different, and just going over there briefly, you can see if this kind of jaggedness I have here. Maybe I should zoom in again so you can see. So I kind of have this jagged selection here. If I smooth it out, it takes away that jaggedness, right? It makes it more of a simple shape. Feathering, I assume you know what that means. Gives it a feathered look. Contrast will actually make it less feathered. And then you can shift the edge in and out. So if I want to bring the edge inside my selection or outside my selection, that could be done there. And I'll zero that out so you don't have to see that. So the real benefit of this thing is that I can, and you know what? Actually, I'm going to go back. I have a pretty jagged selection. Let me go back into this thing and turn on auto enhance. For some reason that wasn't on for me. Deselect. So in this case, maybe I'll just grab the head to save time. And that's good to point out that if yours maybe wasn't set up for auto enhance, like if you don't think the selection looks good, that button right up here will help you. It does take more computing power, so sometimes it might take more time depending on the size of the image. And then I can go back to Refine Edge. Yeah, and that just looks like a little bit better of a selection. And in this area in particular, these sort of hard-edged areas. So the real benefit of Refine Edge is that you can do, you can get rid of this blue in this hair and pick this hair out and let Photoshop do all the work. And how you do that is you just come out here and you automatically it's automatically got a brush set up for you to brush the areas in that you want to keep or remove. And then Photoshop is going to auto detect that for you. So you can just come out here and paint the hair and release and do this in sections. And amazingly, Photoshop has decided, like, yes, I notice the blue background and that you don't want that. And so I am going to remove that while keeping the hair. And I don't know the programming or science side of it. All I know as an artist who likes to make visuals is that it works, and it works really well. And that's someone that grew up where Photoshop didn't have such things. This is awesome. There was some hair down here, wasn't there? And it picks up all this stuff. It works really well. It works really well for areas like this. It does not work really well for areas that are hard edge. So I'll show you like on the front lip here, if I do that there, sometimes it gets confused. Let's see if it's, I guess that worked out right. No. Well, we'll see. But yeah, I generally use it on areas where there's a lot of hair, there's a lot of details, and not on areas that are very hard, especially for this assignment because we're just gonna collage things. And then the final part is down here, this output 2. So I'm gonna change this from selection to new layer is what I like to do. And then I'll you can click on remember settings because I actually want to do that because I want to remember where it outputs to, and then hit OK. And what has happened is, now we can talk about layers, is that it has made a new layer of just that selection and turned off the background for me, right? This grid of white and gray means that it's transparent. Excuse me. And then this layer back here is still there, so that's a great way of working in Photoshop because I can always, if I want to go back and get other things from the image, or I didn't take enough, I can always go back. It's just a nice way of working. There's no reason to delete the pixels of the background. And so now I have this really nice horse that's pulled off, right? We'll go to the flower, right? And likewise, we're going to pull this flower off. Now, for this assignment, you don't have to pull off actual objects, right? You could do simple shapes. And I'll show you really quick, just a really cool way of doing selections is to hold down Shift to make a circle, right? And I've got this circle shape. I can right-click Layer via Copy, and I can rotate this. So this is, you might not notice that this is a circle on top of the actual image. I'm going to rotate this. Do that a number of ways. We'll go over more of this later, so don't freak out. I Control T, Command T on the Macs, and then I can rotate this, right? If I want to get the selection back again, there's a variety of ways to do that. Like I want to get this exact circle back. I like to show you the shortcuts, the fast way that I work immediately rather than the long, arduous ways. So if I just come over to the layer panel and the image layer, and I hold down Control or Command on the Macs, you'll see my finger turn to a selection. So I click on that, and now it's reselected whatever's in that layer, right? Because again, the grid means that it's transparent. And then what I can do is I can come up to Select, and I can modify the selection. I can make it, I'll contract it to make it smaller. So I'll make it like 50 pixels smaller, right? And then what I'll do is I can do another layer via copy, Control T, rotate that, Control click, select, modify, contract that. Let's make it 150 pixels. Oh, I broke the rules of Photoshop. It wouldn't let me do that. So if I wanted to do that, I could do that in sections. Right? And layer via copy, Control T, and rotate it, right? So, you know, just a very simple sort of cutout rotation can get some cool effects. I'm going to go to my history panel. If you don't know that, history panel should be right here. And this shows you everything you've done since you've started Photoshop, since you started this project. It should save about 20 to 50 steps, and then it starts to overwrite itself. So I'll go back to the beginning of the file. And here I am. So to grab the flower, likewise, just grab your quick selection tool and paint. And in this case, will probably be pretty quick because it's orange on green, so it's nice to pick up. I'm going to right click on this and do a layer via copy again. So I have this flower, right, pulled off of that image. And let's see here, then we have our spaces over here, great. So let's bring our files over to, let's bring them over to the space, right? So for starters, actually what I'll talk about really quick first is JPEGs that you bring into Photoshop. You'll notice over here at this layer, it's got a lock next to it. And so if you work destructively on this image in that, let's say you make a selection of this background and hit delete, it's going to bring up this dialog box like, hey, what do you want to do with it? It thinks you want to fill it, and that's because it's locked, right? So if I do a layer via cut, you'll see that it has filled it with my background color because that's how mine is set up. So to have that not happen is you need to double click this to remove that lock. And so now this is a layer in Photoshop that you can do anything you want with. And you'll typically have to do that. I didn't have to do it on this one because I did a layer via copy, and so it made a new layer that is separate from that background, just so you know. So what we can do is I'm going to deselect this, Control D, Command D on Macs, and we're going to bring our things over. So the Move tool is right next to it here, right? So this Move tool has a few things I want to go over real quick. Number one is you have Auto Select at the top left here. If this is not selected, right? If you come in here and grab this top layer and you think you've clicked it, it doesn't move, right? You'll use this sometimes if you have a lot of layers and you know you keep grabbing the wrong layer that you don't want to move. You can turn Auto Select off and then move things around, and then come over here to grab the layers to move them separately. So what I mean is that layer 1 is now selected. I'm over here. I can still move that around. Quite often though, you'll probably have Auto Select on, so that when you click on an actual layer is when you move it around. Number two is, well, we'll do that once we get over, is show transform controls, but let's bring these layers over into the space. So I'm going to bring the flower. I click, drag, move to the tab, wait for it to switch to space, come down and drop. And then I'm going to go over here and get the horse, click, drag over at the tab for space, and then drop. Now what do you notice right away in my case is that these images are actually much larger than space. So what I would recommend doing is, rather than making them smaller, is maybe just make this canvas bigger, right? And so we're going to go up to image, and there's a difference here, right? There's image size, which we've shown, which talks about the pixels dimensions, the inch dimensions, and the resolution, which we're not going to change, right? Because I don't want to do it that way. And then we have this other option called canvas size. And so this is the one we're actually going to change in this case, because I just want to make the canvas larger, and then what I'll do is I'll make the space background bigger. Or I could also go get a larger space picture. It's completely up to you. This is where it anchors from, so if I want to start from the center and go out, it'll go that way. I can do it in inches, so I can just guess that, hey, I need to make this about double. You can also do it in percent, and so I'll change that to 200%. Oops, let me turn off relative. Okay, whatever. So we'll make both the height and the width 200% wider. And good. Now I feel like I've got it larger. Let me go back one step. Conversely, if you want to, and it's a good way to stop talking about transform controls, if you definitely want to make this one smaller, and you turn on either show transform controls to turn on the way to transform it, or Control or Command T to automatically bring up the transform controls, you'll notice that if you're zoomed in, you can't find the things to hold on. If you try to make it smaller, it'll just squish it. So let me escape that. What you have to do is you have to zoom out. So Control Command minus, and then you can see it, and then you can make it smaller to fit into the space. When you move things with transform, you'll notice that if you just grab a corner, you might accidentally squish or squash something. So hold down Shift, just like the circle, to constrain those proportions. I'm pressing Escape to get back to normal, and back up to image, canvas size, and we'll change the percent, the width, and the height. We'll make 200%. All right. So let's go over some transform controls, which we've already kind of started on. Number one is I have this one. Again, you can turn show transform controls off and on. I typically have this off, as I like to view an image and kind of think about how they go together as I'm moving them, right? I don't like seeing this box. It affects my eyes, and I don't normally like it. So I normally, if I decide I want to transform it, I just use the Control T or Command T function to bring up that dialog box. And then I'm going to scale this up. Again, I'm holding down Shift to bring it up. And then you have to either apply that transformation or discard that transformation. You can do that up here with either the cancel it or confirm it. You can also do it on the keyboard with the Enter or the Escape. So Enter approves it, Escape says no. Some other transform things that you can do. Of course, you can do a variety of things. You can rotate things, right? So I just went outside the box to rotate. If you hold down the control button or command on Mac, you can grab individual nodes. These are these corner dots, and you can put something in perspective to make it look like it's on a flat surface on a wall. Up here at under Edit and Transform, there's all these other options that are ready to go: perspective, warp, distort, skew, rotate, and they all do different things. There's also this option here called Puppet Warp. This one's pretty cool in that it puts a mesh on this image, and then you add these pins that you either want to move or stay in place. So I'll show you how that works. Is if you want to slightly adjust the chin up, I put a pin here to kind of act as a hinge, and this pin here could then move, right? And I could put the hair slightly up. I'm gonna Control Z to go back. Let's say I don't want these legs to move while I do that. I pin them to the mat. Maybe move that a little bit, and then you can turn off the mesh so you can actually see what you're doing if you like what you're doing, and then hit return. And so now my horse has been slightly transformed. And you can do this you can go overboard with this or as simple as you like in this assignment. Let's go back though to have my original thing. Your Control Z will only go back twice, so either use your history button to go back further, or Control Alt Z or Command Alt Z on the Macs to go back further, step backward further. All right, so let's resize this a little bit, make it a little bit smaller. This horse. A good idea for collage is to have small things with large things, and to think about dimensionality. So I'm going to make this horse look like it's jumping out of this flower, like it's coming out of the whatever the center of the flower is called. Right. So what I just did here is I came over to my layer, and let me actually crank that back up. So of course, if you don't already know, layers work on stacking. So my horse is currently on top of my flower. If I want my flower on top of my horse, I just come over to my layer panel, literally drag layer 1 that is called above the horse, and vice versa. So I want that flower underneath the horse. So I have this horse. You'll notice right here, you have this option for opacity. So I can turn that down, and that way I can kind of see the flower behind it and kind of imagine and rotate this horse how I think I should be coming out of this flower. So I'm looking at this section right here, this side of the flower, that this horse should be coming out of there. So I turn down the opacity, and then I can Control T and fine tune it. And I can always, of course, do this later too, but this is just a way to start. So maybe it could be a little bit larger again. I'm just kind of imagining how that's going to work. Now here's how I do it. You can do this, there's 100 ways to do work in Photoshop. Here's how I like to do it. So I'm just going to show you that way. Now what I need to do is I need to essentially, I'm going to make a sandwich out of this flour so that I can put the horse in between the flour that is the bread. And so what I do that is I just come over to my quick selection tool or my selection tools, and I'm going to come here and grab that side of the flour that I thought that would be in front of the horse, right? So looking at the horse, you can either have the horse on or off, it doesn't matter. So I know this part needs to block the horse, and then this part on the right does not, because the horse is going to be in front of that. And so I have it, and I actually want more, right? Because I noticed that this is not going to be enough to block the horse. So what I do is I would actually come to my lasso tool and hold down Shift and just grab a big chunk here, there, because I need the entire left side. And and this is good to show you, like you'll see what happened, like the lasso tool, when you start and walk around and release, it makes a straight line. So I want to undo that and try again. So I'm going to do it again, hold down Shift. And what's nice is this way of working is I can bring this lasso tool way outside of the selection because it's transparent. There's nothing there. That space is there, but that's not part of the flower layer. So I just make sure I come back, and now I have this nice selection. All right. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to right click on this, make sure you're on the flower layer, not on any other layer because it won't work. Make sure you're on the flower layer. Right click, and we're going to do a layer via copy. And let's see what we have. Now we have two layers, right, of this flower, the front and the back. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my horse, bring that opacity back up, in between those layers, right? And so they act as a sandwich, right? I like this way of working. I like this way of working because there's no need to erase anything, and I can easily visually like move things around. So I can move this horse in and out and say, yeah, that works, that doesn't work. And I'm using the benefits of layers to my advantage to make it just easier on me. I can also, if I go to After Effects later or do some motion graphics, this is set up so that it's going to jump right out of there, right? Out of that flower. The one thing you probably want to do is you probably want to link the flower layers at least. So like if you accidentally, let's say you come and actually move that a little bit, you'll notice that, and it might be hard to get that back exactly. So I grab layer 2, I hold down Control, Command on the max, and I'm going to link these. So I have these two layers selected. I click on this chain link icon, and so now they're linked. They show you right here. And so now when you click on one, they both come together, and you don't have to worry about separating them. All right. So let's go to our horse. This looks good. I like the way that this is coming out. I'm happy. You'll notice I have excess stuff here, right? I have, turn off the front. I have too much. And so there's a variety of ways you could do it. I would not recommend erasing because you might want, like I said, if you do some motion graphics, to have the whole thing come out eventually. So there's a variety of ways you can work. If you're looking for the simplest solution, I would just grab the lasso tool, right, and kind of roughly grab the horse that I want and do a layer via copy and then turn off the original one. And that way I can always go back to that if I decide I want it again and solve that. And so now I have that. I still left enough information there where I could still move it around, but that the back side, the tail, doesn't show. Another way you could do, and another way we'll get into and is a professional way too, is to start making masks, right? And so there's a variety of ways to work with masks. I'm curious if you guys have worked with masks. The first way is it's right here, right? So we can add a layer mask, and then this is what a mask looks like. It's just a white icon next to your image. And so white reveals and black conceals is how masks work. And so we can get the paintbrush, choose black, because those are your only two colors. Use your brackets to make a really large brush, and we can just paint out that area, right? And you'll notice down here that it has a little black on that image. It's showing you what the mask is. And so that's masked out. It's not deleted, but it's still there. And then you can disable it to see it again and enable it that way also. And what's really nice is you can actually unlink these, right? So that, let me show you what happens if they're linked. If you link them and you move them, you'll notice that the mask moves with the layer. But if you unlink these, this is going to stay in this space. So just make sure you have the actual image selected, not the layer selected, or the mask layer. And then you'll notice that you can still move that. Turn that off so you can see. It's going to move within that mask. So the mask stays in place, and the image moves freely from that. Conversely, if you grab the mask and don't have the image selected, you can move the mask around. And so this is pretty cool. As you may imagine, we can throw this into After Effects and have this animate. You can also do this in Photoshop if you'd like to. So yeah, a variety of ways to do it. You click back in between this, and then they are linked again. All right. So yeah, we have that. It's good. Think about in collage. Think about dimensionality. Let me grab one paper real quick here. All right, so we talked about dimensionality, opacity, sandwich. We talked about masks, chain linking them together. We've already gone through transforming. Excuse me. Some other things you can do is think about, let's disable this layer mask and turn that off. And I'll turn off the background. And I'll just make a brand new background that's not so, make a yellow. That's fine. There we go. So yeah, just so it's not so seizure inducing. You can also, of course, do duplicates, and duplicate is really nice in working with Photoshop. The easy way to do a duplicate is to, first off, let me make this a little bit smaller. So to do a duplicate in Photoshop is just to grab the Alt key, and that should be Alt. It's also Option on your Mac. And you'll notice your cursor, your Move tool, gotta have your Move tool selected. Click, hold down Alt, click drag and drop, and click drag and drop, and click drag and drop, and click drag and drop. And you'll notice you have automatically, it makes more layers that are just called whatever that layer was called 2 and 3 and 4. And so you can have a bunch of duplicates, and you could do any number of things, rotate them, change the color. But it's cool, like, way of working, right? To kind of just think about that. Slight rotations might look pretty rad. And then this one goes maybe back. Right? So a lot of fun. You can do a lot of duplicates. Let's talk about if you ever need to transform this and mirror this. So that's easily found up in Edit and Transform. You can rotate degrees. You can flip horizontal, so now it's facing the other way, and you can have them like running into each other. In this assignment, you can also change the colors. I'll go a little bit over that. How I would do that, you'll notice if you've worked with Photoshop, you probably understand that adjustments work over here. And so if you choose a hue saturation adjustment, you can change that. You'll notice that it does it to the entire image, and so I'm actually not going to do it that way. I'm going to show you the way I like to work, just because it's pretty straightforward, down and dirty. If you have any layer selected and you come up to Image, you can come to Adjustments, and you have a lot of options here, right? You can invert it. You can posterize it, right? And a lot of these are in the adjustments. I like doing it this way because then I don't have to add a mask to it, right? So the way to make these adjustments work, if you prefer to work over here, is you have to have a selection on first, and then you have to add a mask, and then you have to or use one of these things to attach it. So I personally just like just making that decision right away. And so the easiest way to, maybe we'll go back to the rows, is to the nicest way to use this is just to use what's called hue saturation if you want to change the color. And so hue saturation comes up. You can just kind of rotate through these hues and see, like, if you want to make a green flower, right? Or a blue flower. You might have to change the saturation to your liking. Probably need to undersaturate. You can change the lightness here. You can also do what's called a colorize. So if you want to make it more monotone, like one color, you can do that there also. And then if you like it, hit OK. If not, cancel, right? So you can do that for this assignment, change the colors, etc. All right, let's do a few more things. If you find images with white backgrounds, there's probably no reason to use this tool. This tool is actually slower than this method that I prefer using. So you could use the magic wand tool to grab all the white, but I find that doesn't work as fast as, that doesn't even work as fast as I like. So what I like to do is I like to come up to Select and use what's called Color Range. And so when you select, you turn this on, let's see, make sure you can see this. This box appears, and then when you come into the image, you have an eyedropper tool. And if you just click the white, you should have all the white. If you don't, you can increase the fuzziness. You'll see that I have this watermark still in there that's showing up. So I'm going to crank that white up, right? And I'm gonna, if it's grabbing, you'll see it's, I don't know if you can tell in this resolution, it's removing some of this. So I want to make sure that it doesn't take that. So I can come in here and use the negative eyedropper tool to say no, don't take that away. And it looks like it's taking a little bit away from here too. So no, don't take that guy. And so now it's telling me the other. So this is the problem with getting like images with watermarks. It is hard to work with. And I could spend more time trying to find a better image, but you get the idea. So I hit OK, and now I have all the white, right? And I actually want to grab I don't want the white, I actually want the image. And to do that, we're going to come up to Select, and we're going to do Inverse. And you'll use these a lot, all the time. You'll come up to Select all the time, doing Inverse, Color Range, Modify, Growing. You'll use all of this a lot if you use Photoshop a lot. So I'm going to hit Inverse, and now I should have this image. And then I can, likewise, like with the horse, go to Refine Edge. This time I would probably change it to be on black. And in this case, you'll notice that I have a little bit of a white edge, right, to this image. Right? You see this sort of white jagged edge around the edge of the plant. So to solve that, I might feather this a little bit so it's not so harsh. And then I'd also probably shift the edge in a little bit so that it cuts into my selection. You can try to come out here and paint too, but I've noticed that doesn't work as well. You'll see that it's starting to take away from the actual white of the plant. And so I can switch back to my eraser and say, no, don't do that down there. And in this case, you know, this is not a great resolution file. It's got a watermark. I would probably just go get another image. And that's what you would probably do a lot of in Photoshop, is use things and then go find the right thing. It's a lot of that. Let's go put this in the space one just so we have it there. So you can kind of, yeah, add some flora and fauna to your image there. Let's put this on top of that. So yeah, there we go. And then I can fix this. I moved that layer mask around a little bit too much. So let's move that back there and connect it. And you know, you can put the space back on if you want. So yeah, that's what we're looking for in the collage. I'd like to show you one more thing, and that should be enough that you need for this assignment. I'm going to show you next how to do a clipping mask. So let me first grab a silhouette. And we'll grab that. Jeez, I should immediately. All right, we got this one here. This one looks okay. Yeah, let me see if I can grab a larger one. That cat's nice. Mickey Mouse. There we go. This will work. All right, so I'm going to grab this and bring that into Photoshop also. And I'm going to turn off all these guys but the space. Let's open up the silhouette. And we have this. So we want to remove all the white. And so likewise, we could use that method I just showed you, which is to select color range, grab all the white. And at this point, you can, you could double click this, hit OK and delete it. I generally don't work that way, but for this is fine. So now we have the silhouette. It's been cut off. We're going to bring that over to the space image, right? And to make a clipping mask, what we need to do is we actually need to have, so this is cut out, right? It has transparency, because if I have just that layer on, you can see that it has that grid. I want to fill this face with the space, right? And that rhymes. So we're going to drag the space one actually needs to be on top of the face, the silhouette. And this can be any size, it can be any dimension. You can use any image you want, of course, right? Landscape, etc. And then I'm going to come into this layer panel over here, and I'm going to hold down Alt, right? And you'll notice that my little pointer changes to this other thing. And this is to say that, hey, I'm going to make a clipping mask. I'm going to use this imagery and clip to this transparency, what's called an alpha channel, right? So this is actual shape. It's not a full image. And so this is telling it that it's going to clip that to that. And so that's, again, that's Alt, or it might be the Option key depending on what your Mac keyboard layout looks like. And so now this has made, let's put that back on. This has made this layer, you'll see it has a little step down pathway to this clipping mask. And so it's really cool. You can still move this around. And as you think about After Effects and Premiere, you could of course have a movie or something else moving inside of here. And then of course you can move this around too. So you'll notice this is a good point to show, like, let's say I want to move the actual face and not space. I come over here, I'm trying to grab it with auto select and it's not working. So if I turn off auto select, grab layer 4, now I can move that around, right? And then likewise, if you want to link these, just hold down shift, grab them both and link them, and now they'll move together. And then unlink them if you decide, actually I want the space to be more, click off over there. right? To find the cooler part. That part is probably pretty cool. And so that's how you do a clipping mask. And that should be enough you need for this assignment. The last thing we'll go over is how to save for web, and then this concludes this tutorial. In CS5, what I would recommend doing is probably just using save as or save for web and devices. If you save as, make sure as you work, you save as a Photoshop file. I would work incrementally, so like you whatever it's called, blah, 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 and then 2, right? And let's say you spend 15, 20 minutes or you make major decisions, and then call it something, something 3, right? That's the Photoshop file. We don't want the Photoshop file to view. We want a JPEG or a PNG. And so you can go to Save As and save it as a JPEG or a PNG here. Or you can go to Save for Web and Devices, which is right here. And this brings up a dialog box that shows you what it looks like. You have up here these settings that you can change. So you can make it a JPEG, a GIF, or a PNG. For this assignment, if you use actual photos, stay away from GIFs because they're made for solid colors. Use either a JPEG or a PNG. And then you can change how high, if it's a high quality, low quality, you can add blur, you can add all these things here and kind of look at it as you see it. You can also change the size if your image size is too big. Let's say you're applying for a show or something and they want a particular size. You can change that right here. So this is a useful dialog box that I'd recommend getting into if you want. And then hit save. It'll ask you what do you want to save it at, where is it going, and then just hit save and you're good. And last thing I'll show is again, under this this thing here is an ability to take snapshots. So this is the history panel right here. So let's say you're working on your collage and if you're not sure if this color works or another color works, you can take a shot. That's this little snapshot down here, and it makes snapshot this, right? And so and then you can come back and make changes. So let's say I put back on the flower, whatever, right? You just make a bunch of changes. You're not sure if this is better than the original one. You take another snapshot, and you can just jump around to these and say, well, do I like this one? Do I like that one? It's a great way to work. And of course, save as something else to do that. And that should be it. Thank you.